What if I told you that greed once rented a room, that it moved in quietly, paid in gold, and smiled until the day the landlady opened a bag she was never supposed to open? This is not a story about a ghost. This is a story about what happens when you squeeze the poor until the universe squeezes back. In the village of Umu-Ego, the land of money, there was a woman. Not an ordinary woman, a storm wearing a woman's skin.
Her name was Madame Kauna. And the first thing you needed to know about her was this. She owned 50 rooms. 50 families lived beneath her roof, and not one of them slept easy. She had 3 rules, carved into a wooden board at her gate, like commandments from a heartless god. Rule 1, rent before sunrise on the first day, not 1 second late. Rule 2, no crying in this compound. It disturbs my sleep. Rule 3, can't pay, you lose everything. The clothes on your back, the pot on your fire, everything.
She wore gold anklets, so you could always hear her coming. Pam, pam, pam. That sound, those 3 slow beats against the earth, was the most terrifying sound in all of Umu-Ego. Because when you heard them getting closer, someone was about to lose their home. Her name was Neoma. 1 month ago, she had a husband, a home, a future. Now she had nothing but a sick child and a landlady with no mercy. She knelt in the mud, holding her baby, soaked, shivering, coughing weakly against her chest, and looked up at Madame Kauna, standing dry on the porch, eating a roasted chicken leg, completely unbothered. Please, Madame Kauna. Neoma's voice was barely a voice. My husband died last month. The baby has been sick. I have nothing left. Just 1 more week. 1 week, I beg you. Kauna chewed slowly, deliberately. Then she spat a chicken bone. It landed in the mud right in front of Neola's knees. Does the sun wait for the moon? Kauna said. Does hunger wait for the harvest? She snapped her fingers. 2 heavy men appeared from the shadows. They went into Neoma's room and they threw her mat into the mud. They threw her clothes into the mud. They smashed her pots onto the ground.
Then Kauna walked to the door herself, pulled it clean off its hinges, tucked it under her arm like a trophy. No door for people who don't pay, she sneered. Go and sleep with the goats. The baby cried. The rain poured harder. Neoma clutched her child, looked up at the dark, indifferent sky, and whispered just one thing. God of the helpless, are you sleeping? The next morning, the rain stopped, and a stranger walked into the compound. Tall, wrapped in a black cloak, a wide hat pulled so low his face was completely hidden, and dragging behind him a massive, heavy jute bag that scraped the ground with every step. Scrape, scrape, scrape. Every tenant who saw him stepped back without knowing why. Children went silent. Dogs retreated under the stairs.
But Madame Kauna saw the bag, and her eyes locked onto it the way a hawk locks onto a rat. She rushed forward, smile stretched wide, and counterfeit. Welcome, distinguished stranger. Are you looking for accommodation? I have the finest rooms in all of Umu-Ego. The stranger's voice came out deep and dusty, like a drum that had been buried underground.
I need 1 room, the quietest room. I pay in advance. Kauna pointed to room 7, the very room she had stripped from Neoma that morning. She had put the door back on just hours ago. 50 cowries a month, she said. The real price was 10. The stranger didn't argue, didn't blink. One gloved hand reached into his cloak and dropped a pile of gold coins into Kauna's open palm. Real gold, heavy, gleaming, warm in a way that had nothing to do with the sun.
6 months in advance, he said. Do not disturb me. Do not enter my room.
Kauna stared at the gold. Her hand was shaking. Not from fear, from something much more dangerous. Yes, sir. Of course, sir. Welcome, sir. The stranger picked up the bag. Scrape, scrape, scrape. He disappeared into room 7. The door closed. And somehow, the compound felt colder. Days passed. Then weeks. The stranger never came out during daylight. He never bought food, never lit a fire, never greeted a soul. But every night, without fail, sounds drifted through the walls of room 7. Chink, clatter, chink, like someone counting a mountain of coins that never got any smaller. And every night, Madame Kauna lay in her bed, staring at the ceiling, listening. Who is this man? Where did all that gold come from? What is inside that bag? Greed is a fire. Feed it once and it will burn down everything you own trying to grow bigger. 1 month later, she knocked on room 7. The door opened just a crack. Darkness behind it. The stranger's face, invisible. The rent has gone up, Kauna said. Inflation, 100 cowries now. Her hand reached out from the darkness. More gold coins, exact amount. The door closed. Kauna stood there, staring at the coins in her palm. Something shifted behind her eyes, a thought forming, slow and dangerous as smoke. He paid too easily, and that was his biggest mistake. Because a woman like Kauna doesn't see generosity, she sees weakness. A week later, she was back. New tax, 200 cowries. The hand, more gold. The door closed. Kauna smiled slowly. The smile of someone who has just discovered a well with no bottom. She didn't just want the rent anymore. She wanted the source. She wanted the bag. She paced her room at night, thinking, scheming, running numbers in the dark behind her eyes. If she threw him out fast enough, locked the gate before he could drag that bag outside, everything in that room became hers. It was right there in Rule 3. Can't stay? You leave everything. She had used it on widows, on orphans, on an old man who had nothing left but a cooking pot, and she had taken that too. She thought she could do the same thing to a stranger in a black cloak. She was wrong. Midnight, Kauna watched from her window as the stranger slipped out of room 7 and disappeared into the dark village. She waited. She counted. Then she moved. Master key, quiet footsteps. The door of room 7 swung open. Pitch black inside, windows sealed shut. The air was heavy and cold, like the inside of something ancient that hadn't been disturbed in a very long time. And there, in the corner, the jute bag, bulging, sitting completely still, yet somehow feeling like it was breathing. She grabbed it. It wouldn't move. She pulled with both hands, bent her back into it, strained with everything she had. It was like trying to pull a mountain. It is full of gold, she whispered to herself. It has to be. She backed out, locked the door behind her, and she waited. Just before sunrise, footsteps, the stranger returned. Kauna was standing at the gate with her 2 men, arms folded, chin raised high. You, out! I paid for 6 months, the stranger said, calm, still, like water with no wind on it. I don't care what you paid. There is bad juju in your room. Evil spirits. You are a danger to this compound and every person living in it. And my belongings? Kauna's grin spread across her face like a crack in dry earth. Confiscated to cover the cost of spiritually cleansing the room you contaminated. A long pause. The wind came up. The stranger's cloak rippled slowly. And then he lifted his head, and Kauna saw his eyes for the first time.
They were not eyes, they were hollow sockets, and inside them blue fire burned. Quiet, patient, ancient. Kauna's breath stopped in her throat. Her two men took one step backward, but her hand was already curled tight around those gold coins. And greed has always been louder than fear.
Leave, she forced out. Now! The stranger smiled. It was the most terrible smile ever worn by any face. Very well, he said quietly. I will leave, but you must keep everything in that room. Every single thing. Do not let anything out. Not one bone, not one breath. I promise, I swear it on my own life. Now go! The stranger turned. He walked toward the gate. His footsteps grew quieter and quieter. And then he simply was not there anymore. No gate opening, no footsteps fading into the distance. Just morning mist and silence so complete it rang like a bell. Kauna blinked, shrugged, and ran for room 7. She locked the door from the inside, heart hammering, hands trembling, not with fear, with hunger. She fell to her knees before the bag. Her fingers walked the rope. She pulled it open wide. And she waited. Nothing came out. She tilted the bag forward. A skull rolled out and stopped at her feet, grinning up at her. Then a rib cage, a femur, finger bones clicking against each other as they hit the floor, as though greeting one another after a long separation. Kauna screamed, but the bag kept emptying. The bones kept coming. And they did not just lie there. They assembled, snapping into place on the floor of room 7 like puzzle pieces that already knew exactly where they belonged. One skeleton stood up, then 2, then 5, then 10. They filled the room from wall to wall, standing in silence, their hollow faces all turned toward her. And from somewhere deep inside the bag, from somewhere that had no bottom, the voice came, deep, dusty, everywhere at once. I am the collector of greed. I carry the bones of the hungry ones, the ones who died with empty stomachs, while women like you slept on full ones. The widow whose baby shivered in the rain, the old man whose pot you seized, the orphan you left without a door. I carry them all, and now I have found you. Kauna spun and ran for the door. It would not open. She clawed at the windows, sealed shut. The skeletons did not chase her. They did not need to. They simply began to close in, slowly, patiently, the way justice always moves when it has nowhere else to be. And then they started to dance.
For 3 days and 3 nights, the tenants of the compound heard screaming coming from room 7. No one moved. No one spoke above a whisper. An old tenant stood at his door, listened, then closed it softly. They all remembered Kauna's own rule. No crying in this compound. It disturbs my sleep.
Therefore, dawn, the door of room 7 creaked open on its own. The entire compound held its breath. Something crawled out. It took a long moment for anyone to recognize her. Hair white as ash. Eyes stretched open so wide they looked as though they had forgotten how to close. Body thin, hollowed out, trembling like a leaf in a storm that only she could feel. No gold anklets, no necklaces, no rings, just rags, and a woman who was no longer quite the woman she had been. Madame Kauna dragged herself across the compound floor on her hands and knees. Neoma, the widow she had thrown into the mud, was there,
quietly washing other people's clothes to earn a few coins. She froze when she saw what was crawling toward her. Kauna reached Neoma's feet and she fell. "Take the house," Kauna whispered. "Take the keys. Take everything. I don't want it anymore. I don't want any of it. Just take it, please." Neoma knelt down slowly. "Madam Kauna, where is your gold?"
Kauna's eyes moved to room 7 and she began to scream. The bones! The bones are still counting. They are counting everything, every coin, every door I took, every child I left in the rain. They know the number. They know all of it.
Neoma pulled the screaming woman into her arms, and the woman who had made her kneel in the mud wept like a lost child coming home. Madame Kauna never recovered. She spent the rest of her life at the village dump, picking up stones and counting them one by one, whispering numbers into the air, convinced each one was a gold coin she could somehow return to pay back everything she owed.
The tenants took the compound. No landlord came to claim it. No one dared. They lived freely for years, and Neoma raised her child in the very room that had once been ripped away from her, and she never locked the door. And room 7, no one entered it again, not ever. But on quiet nights, especially rainy ones, they say that if you press your ear to that door and hold your breath and listen,
You will not hear gold. You will hear bones shifting slowly in the dark, and a voice, calm, patient, ancient as consequence itself, whispering just 3 words: enough is enough. The elders say the fly that has no one to advise it will follow the corpse into the grave. Do not be Kauna.